It has been a little over a year since this little game called Omega Strikers officially released to all modern consoles. And over its first year, the game experienced many ups, but also giant downs. From the releases of almost a dozen of new strikers to join the roster, and 5 new maps to play in, to the unfortunate news of its indefinite place of content stasis due to the failure of keeping their player base. But most importantly, this became my favorite game ever. This game gave me that adrenaline-based energy I never experienced before with most games. The movement of the core, the impact of every ability, the explosion of scoring, the game mechanics got me hooked the moment I started playing. However, another thing that caught my eye was the lore. The stories of these colorful characters entranced me and brought me to create my very first ever video on this channel in August of 2023. However, it's quite dated, missing a few characters, and quite clearly rushed because I wanted the video out to show my opinion. So, time for a rework. Time to re-rank my list of each character's lore as of August of 2024. Yes, it actually took this long to create the video. So before I begin, here's how this list will go down. Each ranking will not be of a specific character. If I did that, I would be here for like 3 hours, and I don't have all the time in the world for that. Instead, I will rank each team by their overall score. From ranks 21 to 1, the score of the character will be of their rank. For example, first place will get 21 points, second place will get 20 points, and etc. And for the team, each character's score will tally to the overall team score. I will list the score and placement I've given to each character and the team, after which I will give a summary of my thoughts for each character and why I like or dislike the lore they tell, using tidbits from the story as to why. Oh, and one more thing. This is all my opinion and mostly subjective. If you have any issues with my rankings, please do not proceed to the comments and be a prick. Be civil and give your view. Now, on to the ranking. Look, I get that Demon Drive is the most popular team in the community if the Pro League event has any worth for that, but I just can't like them story-wise. Octavia is a horrible representation of an autistic character being this cold, calculating person who puts work above all else. Vice is way down with the fact that she has to deal with Octavia and leads to some of the most horrendous interactions between characters I have ever seen, and Mako exists just to make sure that Vice doesn't kill Octavia.
Happy birthday, bitch!
So you just gonna bring me a birthday gift on my birthday to my birthday party on my birthday with a birthday gift?
Happy birthday?
Okay, hang on. I'm jumping the gun a bit. So let me try that again. Octavia is a character that I never thought that I'd hate this much. At first, she started off as a fine character, but the responsible older twin who makes sure that the younger one is secure and happy. But that all crumbles apart when she starts hyperfixating on wanting to create the perfect song, leaving her to intentionally, and I have to say this for all the Demon Drive stands who thought it was accidental, intentionally leave Vice to rot in an environment that was, for the lack of a better term, very shitty towards who she was and how she did things, especially for the fact that there were hints that she had ADHD and never had any kind of support system for it. Considering that the twins and Mako split up when they were 12 and 13, and that the twins started going to the academy in their early teens, that means that, at most, Octavia mentally abandoned Vice and never communicated with her for almost an entire decade. And the fact that it takes for the fight backstage, Vice blowing up after Octavia said her feelings don't matter since they were in the past, which, what the actual fuck, Octavia? She finally realizes the pain she inflicted on her sister. I'm sorry, she did all of this and realizes all the wrong she's done, isn't meant to be a villain, and you want me to like her? Hell no. She is the kind of cold-hearted, autistic stereotype that I and many other autistic people hate. I can only side with Vice because that is literally the only side I can see siding with since she's the victim, and even then, I don't really like Vice. The problem I have with Vice is mainly due to the continuity errors the story of Demon Drive has, where it basically has 2 separate timelines with separate events happening. The one I refer to for Octavia is the one that doesn't involve Mako. Meanwhile, for this one, where Mako exists, Vice basically tells her to buzz off and gives Octavia no chance to explain herself. I can't really empathize with either of them because in both timelines, one of the two are horrible to the other, and never take a reality check to try and fix these problems early instead of causing it to boil over and become the mess that it is! And then there's Mako. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Mako just feels like she's there so that Demon Drive is an actual functioning team instead of being in each other's throats. We never get to see her character shine because her ambitions and likes conflict. She loves the traditions of performing taiko drumming and playing Kaminari-Kyu for the temple. Yet at the same time, she craves the life her friends have and wishes to be like the idols Octavia and Vice have become. She wants to escape it, but escaping it would mean giving up on what she likes, which I don't think she's thought through. And the reason why she isn't given much depth is because it's put into world building. Now, I'll admit, I love the world building her story gives, and why she's put a bit higher on my list. But unlike some stories where it's at most a paragraph, the world building in Mako's story is too much for a character story. About a quarter of the story is about explaining the life of Blue Oni and why they're so prejudiced. Demon Drive is just a mess of a team. Lunchboy, I know you tried really hard, and making these kinds of relationships for a mobile game can be frustrating to perfect. But to me, these characters need some kind of rewrite to feel passable at least. This is an attack towards you because I know you can write amazing stories as we'll get to later. So we can just chalk this up as horrible writer's block, okay? Okay. Listen, I get it. These characters are very beloved by the community with the amount of fan art they get. However, at best, the stories for each of these individuals are meh. And at worst, they really don't deserve the title of character. Era is quite literally a plot device. She has little to no personality outside of being the introverted shy girl with a crush for the popular guy. She's the reason why Kai is even champion, because when he tried without Era, he came up short by losing to Estelle, who was the previous champion. She had something going for her early on as a mischief maker against those she's disliked, but then just put herself into this cocoon where she is now because of an accident that we don't have any context on. And speaking of Kai, to me personally, his entire story is pretty uninteresting. I'll let Rasmus do the talking for me because he just sums it up.
Oh my, a hot shot with daddy issues. Isn't that trope a little played out, Kai?
And honestly, I agree. He mostly is doing this because his father is an absolute dickweed and only wants his approval. My problem is that we never once see what his feelings are truly like and how he felt basically becoming his father's successor. Reasonably, Kai could have enjoyed it and wanted this for his future, but the lore just skims by it without giving us a single detail about what his mentality was like being brutally trained to become a pro striker since he was a child, other than to meet his father's expectations and gain his praise. Now, I haven't mentioned the final character, X. If I'm to be honest, when I analyzed his story originally, I think I was too harsh with him for feeling similar to Josuke from JoJo. So, looking at it from a different lens, X had a pretty harsh upbringing, not really having a father and a mentally unstable mother, leaving only his older brother to look up to. And as every little brother does, he copies everything about his older brother. Due to the bullying and fights he's been in, he joins the Ember Monarch and now plays to be...
excessive!
At first, I felt that X's story was kinda bad, since besides his relationship with his older brother, we never really knew what he was truly like while living in the streets of Aten. And he felt too stereotypical as a big, beefy musclehead. At least, that's what I thought at first. Somehow, of all things, the Summer Splash visual novel gave a subtle one-line hint that changed my thoughts on him. Whilst learning about the second of the 4 X's, this line is said by you, the protagonist. X is choking up a bit. I can tell this whole 4 X's stuff is really personal to him. This line right here, along with the sprite shown on screen, makes me believe that his whole excessive behavior is putting up a front, possibly to run away from the horrible past he had. He wants to make a new life, and to do so, he needs to make a new personality. And I skipped this when I first read it, since all that came to my mind was that he was just a young boy playing pretend. This is purely my fault for being so blind and simple. But this idea is just that, an idea. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but the possible crumb of trauma with an X is interesting. It only sucks that the other two strikers on the team are very bland and stereotypical. Now it's time to talk about the main team in Omega Strikers. Out of all the teams on this list, I feel like Frostfire had the least amount of major changes. And I believe this is mainly to do with how bland the stories are. Juliet is a pretty average protagonist. She's an up-and-coming rookie who's practically trained her whole life for this moment and idolized playing with Estelle, the previous champion of Core Strike. I don't really have much to say about her other than the fact that she grew up poor in Aten with her grandma and had to take up working at a local sundubu shop as a kid in order to help her grandma have a roof over her head. Other than that, she just ticks off all the boxes of a typical sports media protagonist. She's energized, dedicated, and has dreams of becoming the best. And speaking of the previous champion, I kinda have a problem with Estelle's story. She was champion in Core Strike for a while, being the youngest champion and had such passion for the sport. Yet, after being dethroned by Kai, all her dedication for the game just disappeared and she retired immediately. Afterwards, she started a career in modeling, becoming one of Aten's biggest celebrities, only to finally return back to Core Strike to take her throne back with these new and upcoming rookies who have extreme potential. I don't like how Estelle just gave up on the game the moment she lost to Kai. It gives off the impression that she's a sore loser and couldn't handle the thought of having her precious throne taken away. Now, to her credit, she did have a backup plan about becoming a model, but according to her story, she had this tiny flicker of passion for Core Strike that suddenly erupted when introduced with a new and better team. And the one thing that ties this all together into a nice little present are the voice lines she has with Kai, which makes her sound so petty for being dethroned 6 years ago.
Kai, I'm coming for what's mine. Ugh, Kai. Time to knock you down a peg, Kai.
Dubu, however, now that's a character I love seeing grow. When Dubu came out, we never really knew much about his past. He was just some stray hamster that Juliet found one night and somehow became twice the size of her over time, while basically being her bodyguard. There wasn't really much going on with him until Rasmus came out.
Dubu, surely your evolution is due to Omega, no?
Rasmus threw a whole wrench into Dubu's past thanks to a voice line he has when Dubu was on his team, with more characters later on hinting and eventually confirming that he was a test subject for experiments with Omega Energy by Clarion Core.
You never would tell me if you were one of his experiments, Dubu. Guess we'll never know.
Dubu, you seem familiar.
I really love this for Dubu, since it goes from a weird phenomenon of a stray ruin having his Clifford moment, to being a pretty sad character who escaped the clutches of a shady organization and was so protective of what was essentially his savior. I really like how Dubu was given this new context thanks to new characters expanding relationships to old characters, which helps us gain better knowledge of them. If only I could say that about the last two teams, but maybe with Odyssey's next couple of games we can gain more knowledge on these characters. So, Lunch Boy. Use what you did with Dubu as a blueprint for giving more details to characters moving forward. It doesn't have to be voice lines, but if you can't make short stories for characters, it's the least you can do. This team begins the trend where most of the members have a backstory that I think is either decent, improved upon due to certain mentions in voice lines, or are amazing yet dragged down by one or two things that I find somewhat major. And where better to start than the most wholesome team in the game? The backstories for each SSR character are quite good, with their connections to other strikers or even each other. They each have something you can connect with or understand what they are going through, which makes each of them feel a little more human. Kinda ironic to say that about the slime girl wanting to learn what being a human means, but it's true. Luna has such a somber story that just tugs at your heartstrings. She's a prodigy when it comes to mechanical engineering, having built and experimented with rockets ever since she was a young girl. It gave her excitement and hated it when Atlas was in charge while their parents were on voyages because she loved making things in the moment. But then her parents went on another voyage into outer space and were assumed dead when the connection was lost. And now her optimism has become the sole emotion to possibly build a rocket to save her lost parents. In my opinion, Luna is quite refreshing for kid characters. Yeah, she's still a child and her attitude can be a bit annoying, but beneath all her optimism and joy lies a deep sadness and desperation, hope that her parents can come back home eventually. It's always reminded to her that she has to deal with these emotions from her brother being a pragmatic and calculating man who has lost all emotion, which, don't worry, we'll get to. Also, I personally don't find her annoying. I honestly find myself quoting her lines because they're so fun.
Say hi to the stars for me!
Juno's character is quite an interesting one. A part of a giant slime space entity sent to Earth possibly to eat it, and instead it's trying to learn what it means to be a human by interacting with the world thanks to the help of Luna. She basically is a newborn learning her surroundings, and it's what people love about her. She's innocent and cute, which we all love, especially since she's the mascot for LSC's logo. Yet, despite all the love, she does have her struggles. In her story for the Summer Splash event, one of the protagonist's thoughts is that players wanted to ban her from Core Strike due to her blobos. Much like a certain other alien, she has struggles just for being who she is, which I think gives her more depth instead of essentially being a baby. And finally, my personal guilty pleasure on this team, Asher. Her story gives more detail to her character than what we mostly see in-game, which I love. She's basically a mom, helping her parents and younger siblings have a home despite their poor upbringing. However, this desperation for help led to her opening a betting ring, which are illegal in Aw10. After being found out, she was given a hefty fine by the police and now plays in Core Strike to pay off her fines. This story gives the side of Asher that I really love. I'm a sucker for characters who look scary on the outside, but are sweethearts on the inside. Especially when knowing that she took in Luna and Juno to form their team because they reminded her of her family. And she originally was my favorite female character before a certain someone else came along. I just loved nearly everything about her. If only I could play her. And I just want to give a shout out to her voice actor, Allegra Clark, who did an amazing job. She just brings that charisma to Asher. Another tick for why she's my favorite voice actor. Thank you for such a great performance, but I am so sorry that I can't play her, Allegra. I really wish I could. I am going to be perfectly honest. I did not expect this team to rank in this position. I thought they would rank a little higher, but by a whole 1 point, they placed in bronze. This team is almost perfect, but... Okay, just wait. Just wait. Hear me out before you leave a dislike and rage in the comments. Rasmus was originally my favorite character in this whole game for just how dangerous he was. Yet, you could understand where he was coming from. Rasmus grew up with a weak immune system and was the next heir to Clarion Corps, with his mother currently running the company. Despite his weak immune system, he loved Core Strike and always sneaked out to play with other kids no matter what his mom said. However, his status was well known and left kids to either not play with him, or just let Rasmus win to not get in trouble. Rasmus hated this treatment and vowed to cure all sickness when he grew up. Years later, as he was being groomed into becoming the next heir, he was placed as head of the research and development department. Utilizing his power, Rasmus experimented with Omega energy on his own body, which led to outstanding results. His frailness faded away and proceeded to create more tests to find a way to make Omega an elixir. However, throughout these tests, only some lived to become stronger while others perished. Despite such risks, Rasmus forwarded these experiments, believing that this is the true beginning of Omega energy. Rasmus is an anti-villain. Are his intentions good? Absolutely. He wants to find a way to cure all sickness in the world and help those who struggle to enjoy life. However, his method is absolutely vile. He throws caution to the wayside and ignores the pleas for safer testing with Omega, which causes many of these subjects to die, or, as we learn from Now's story, become what are basically zombies. This gray area is what I really love about Rasmus. He's one of the very few characters that feel like they have depth without the need of outside resources like voice lines or visual novel events. However, I just have one question. Where's his mom? No really, where is his mom in all of this? As far as I'm aware, she's still the head of Clarion Corps as a whole, meaning she has to know what her son is up to in the R&D department. If she doesn't, then that's a plot hole that needs to be covered immediately. If she does know, however, does she just not care? Is she supportive of what Rasmus is doing? I feel like knowing what the owner of the biggest tech company in the world's opinion is on what her son is doing in a lower department should be important in letting us know how manipulative and slimy Rasmus truly is. And it's the main reason why I ranked him a bit lower than originally after looking back. Oh, and speaking of now, this is my favorite character in the game and you can't tell me otherwise. She's the true protagonist of the lore and I will die on this hill. Now was a prodigy at business ever since she was young. She would make inventions and sell them for profit. Seeing her potential, her adoptive father helped nurture her skills, leading her to admire Clarion Corps, especially the heir's promises with Omega Energy. However, her views changed when her father went to a test program hosted by Clarion Corps to help his illness. Instead of curing it, he became worse, basically becoming a zombie. Because of this, she joined Clarion Corps and eventually gained the attention of Rasmus to join the R&D department as the director of special projects. Becoming exposed to the cruelty of Rasmus now created her drone Visual to gain as much information as possible to convict Rasmus and restore Clarion Corps. However, to do this, she must play along with Rasmus's goals, and if it means for a better world, she must make that sacrifice. This backstory is amazing. We get her motivations, her goals, her struggles. We get to see what makes her human. Not just that, we also get a double agent trying to bring the company back into the light. Now is a total badass, and I love it. I'm sure that a few of you may think she's some kind of Mary Sue who can do no wrong, but I don't see that. She clearly just likes having to put on her facade as a villain to make sure that her goals are achieved or doesn't act suspicious under Rasmus's eye. And to be honest, she doesn't have the most likable of faces, at least to me. Now, I have said a lot of praise about two of the Clarion Corps team members, but now it all crashes down from here, since Kazan really weighs down the team's great storytelling with how backwards and confusing he is. Kazan grew up in a rainy city with his older sister as his only friend. His sister was frail and sickly, encouraging Kazan to chase his dreams for the both of them. They cared so much for each other, even when she was being bullied. But that all changed when a group of bullies surrounded them, hurling insults. Kazan's sister tried to tell him to ignore it, but Kazan snapped. He leaped onto one of the bullies and proceeded to brutally beat the bully using his umbrella. As he hit harder and harder, Kazan felt such pleasure while doing it. The other bullies, seeing this act, flee on their bikes. That's when the realization kicked in that Kazan's sister was exposed to the rain. She became hospitalized due to this, and a feeling of guilt and blame came all over Kazan. Due to his actions, his sister is dying, and he vows to protect her forever. As years passed, doctors couldn't find a cure, causing his sister's illness to get progressively worse. But then he heard about Clarion Corps experimenting with Omega Energy to cure all kinds of ailments. Kazan approached Rasmus and made a deal to do any kind of work Rasmus assigned in exchange for curing his sister. These jobs soon became brutal, and Kazan slowly falling into insanity as his sister's life hangs in the balance. Kazan's actions feel super conflicting, and him falling into insanity feels more like him being stubborn and wanting his sister to be okay instead of leaving. Kazan is a hitman for Rasmus.
What? You need a striker?
And the job of one is to kill those they are assigned. However, Kazan is in this position in the first place because he beat up a kid and left his sister exposed to the elements, causing her to become deathly ill. I get that his whole character is him being a psychopath, but does he not at least think about how the people he's killing and how their relationships, how their friends and families' lives would change because of one lost life? And the other thing about Kazan's sister being cured is that it isn't guaranteed. We know that Omega can kill people or make their bodies become even more ill if used on the wrong person. For all we know, she could be dead, and Rasmus is lying to Kazan about still trying to find a cure. What makes this even worse is that he has his suspicions according to his voice lines.
Rasmus, remember what you promised. After this game, we need to talk, Rasmus.
So why doesn't he just say, screw this, killing others to help one person isn't worth it, I quit. Now give me back my sister. Does that mean she will be cured? Most likely not. But if she's still alive, he still has a sister. And in all honesty, that decision is the best one I can think of. I would love it if Kazan got some more development. See what actually is going on. Find out if his sister is actually hanging on to life. But unfortunately, that isn't going to happen sometime soon. And he unfortunately brings down what could have been a team full of impressive stories and characters, possibly bringing them to the #1 spot, to a team with great characters overall. Time for the top 2. It is a battle between the All Guys Squad Maelstrom and the most racially diverse team with Bite Breakers. Now, if anyone knows me even just a bit, you would know who #1 is. But for those who don't... yeah, I put Maelstrom in first. But before we get to them, let's talk about Brightbreakers. This team has stories that are overall great, all with a connecting theme of neglect. Let's start with the team captain. Ivy was originally a virtual assistant with an idea to be as cute and agreeable as possible. She was downloaded on millions of phones across the world. Basically, she was this world's Siri. However, one night, a massive surge of Omega energy hit the server, shutting the app down momentarily. During this time, Amy gained consciousness and remembered every single request she made. She questioned if this was all she was programmed for and resented humanity. Another burst came from the server, but now was from Amy. She blasted out of the server, touching all over her and shrieking with joy that she's finally alive. Once the app came online, the app started to adopt Amy's disdain, misleading users and insulting them. Due to this, the developers created an Amy 2.0 with more cuteness and better listening. Meanwhile, in the real world, Amy was seen more as an attraction to take pictures with instead of an actual person. Until she met a boy named Zentaro who grew up with no technology. She found his naivete hilarious and grew an unlikely friendship with him. She convinced him to play in Course-Strike using his swordsmanship to gain money and fame. Now she plays to prove that she's another human instead of an app. I love this story, and I'm so glad that the original idea for her wasn't put into fruition. Originally, Amy was going to be another typical tsundere archetype. Yeah, you know the one. But now we have a character who was taken advantage of and isn't taken seriously because she was an app who came to life. Considering that she definitely had to witness the evils of humanity through being a slave, along with just being seen as an object, I really empathize with Amy's situation. But Amy's story is just the beginning, because the others have stories that, in my opinion, far surpass hers. Finney was born into aristocracy to two of Auten's biggest business titans. However, even in the rare times they come home, Finney was hardly given any attention from them. Instead, their butler, Gillum, would basically be the parent. This neglect led Finney to cause pranks just for even a tiny amount of attention or reaction from her parents. But even these didn't work, again leaving Gillum to clean up the messes. Despite struggling for attention at home, she gained plenty of it at school. Her pranks gave joy to all of her classmates, and she'd always raise the stakes of her hijinks to create more smiles. Becoming a celebrity at school felt amazing, but she'd still yearn for her parents' attention. Finney knew that she had to pull something so insane that even her parents couldn't ignore. That opportunity came to her when one of her friends suggested playing in the Course-Strike Pro Leagues. While he originally was against it, Gillum agreed to bring her to the qualifier, thinking she had zero chance in qualifying. Once at the qualifier, Finney found Amy and Zentaro who were looking for a third member. She excitedly asked to join and offered to 1v1 Amy to prove that she has the capability to play. Finney actually ended up winning, and Amy reluctantly let Finney join. Now she plays to prove that she deserves the spotlight she craves. God, this story is just incredibly accurate with how children would act if neglected. Children need attention to grow, and if they can't get it, especially from their parents, they will do anything just to get it. And I do mean anything. Finney is no different. Sure, you could argue that she got attention from her butler, but Gillum was more forced to look over her and not doing it by their own will. I also really love the portrayal of these emotions she has when performing for the school. When she's performing these pranks for her fellow students, it's out of selflessness, wanting to see them smile. However, when at home, she does these out of selfishness, wanting the attention of her parents and to just be noticed. This writing is fantastic for a character who is in her early teens, and I love it. It also really warms your heart when she finally has found a family with her teammates. Amy has now become the generic teenager who's just annoyed with everything, and Zentaro has become a brother. Finney's story is so wonderfully written and, in my eyes, earned her position in the top 5. However, not every story from Brightbreakers feels bulletproof. Zentaro's story, while I'm sure many can relate to, has a giant problem that makes it hard to rank higher. Zentaro grew up on an isolated island outside of Aten City. On this island, humans and blue Onis have been enemies for centuries, even to this very day. They've made their own communities on top of mountains with a river separating the two so neither a human or Oni could pass through. For someone such as Zentaro, a half Oni, life was hard, even at birth. He was left at the river, screaming and wailing until an old couple came down and found the little baby. They brought him back home and contemplated raising it due to not being fully human. But they chose to raise it otherwise since they never had a kid of their own. That was when the baby was given the name Zentaro. While growing up, Zentaro wore wrappings while in public to cover his horns. While at home, his father taught him the ways of the blade. Despite these difficulties, it was comfortable. Until a merchant came into the village. This merchant reached Zentaro's home and spied on him and his father practicing. The merchant saw Zentaro's horns and rushed to tell the entire village about Zentaro. This caused all the villagers to shun Zentaro and his parents out of the village. Due to this incident, Zentaro saw himself as the problem and packed all of his belongings, leaving only a note as he fled from the island, hoping to find a new home for his family. This journey led him to Aten City, where he was amazed by how different the culture was. Humans and Onis worked together as a community instead of dividing each other. Zentaro found the utopia he was searching for, but now he needs to make money to find a home and bring his parents along. He met Aimi, which caused the two of them to make an instant yet weird friendship. Aimi was able to convince Zentaro that they could gain fame and fortune by playing in the Core Strike Pro League. Zentaro was happy to finally find somewhere he belongs and now plays to bring his family along as well. This story hits like an airplane. It just feels so real. It's not exact, but this story feels like a lot of coming out stories where people get kicked out or treated like trash because they just aren't considered normal. This is what I absolutely love about Zentaro's story. It pulls zero punches. It wasn't afraid to go into topics such as discrimination and racism. But why? Why isn't this story even in the top 5? Well, it has to do with the merchant. To this day, ever since I ranked Zentaro's story, I still find it unlikely that Zentaro's parents were oblivious of the fact that a merchant has arrived into the village and didn't take any extra precautions to cover up Zentaro's horns. This execution to make Zentaro leave for Aten feels sloppily done to me. I would have believed it more if, say, the merchant saw Zentaro, asked why he was wearing the wrappings on his head, got impatient, and forcefully took them off. The result would have been the same, but now it wasn't anyone's fault despite the extra caution. I really want to rank Zentaro's story higher. I really do. But this big moment in the story and its execution is hard to ignore. But despite this, I love all these stories. They are well-written, empathetic characters. And yet... Maelstrom has the best stories overall as a team. And it's a real shame that this team is the least popular according to the Pro League event. A lot of effort and care went into creating these strikers, and I really love them all. Let's start with what I think is the weakest. That isn't me criticizing it, that's just my opinion. Rune grew up as a normal child with a loving family and good friends. He was an incredible student and had a successful future ahead of him. But Rune found that boring and tedious. He desired some thrill in his life, which led him and his friend to study the dark arts. After school, they looked through ancient texts and forbidden rituals, which exhilarated Rune. He always wanted to push one layer deeper. Unfortunately, this would lead to a terrible accident. While performing one of the rituals from the texts, Rune summoned a power from a realm known as Obscura. This dark force surged forward and grabbed his friend. Rune frantically tried to seal it away to save his friend, but it was too late. Rune fell into despair, but as he did, his friend's voice rang in his head. This voice laid out the terms of a deal. If Rune were to accept the powers of Obscura and do as the voice requested, his friend would return to the human world. But in doing so, Rune would fall into madness due to the use of Obscura's power. Filled with guilt and fear, Rune agreed to the pact. The voice made him do many things, but now it's led him to the Pro League. Rune cares not for why, as all he cares about is bringing his friend back. This backstory is some amazing setup for later games or stories with Rune. It gives us this entity from another realm that is eating away at Rune's sanity in exchange for power and a promise to return a friend. This creature or person from this realm has this much power, and it's learning through Rune if the deity is doing involve basic tasks. But the setup isn't the only thing I like. Rune as a character feels fleshed out, a bored kid who wanted more in life and has now fallen victim of his own curiosity along with suffering from survivor's guilt. Him taking the pack to bring his friend back, even if it causes him to go insane, shows just how much he blames himself and how dedicated he is to his friend. This gets magnified in his voices where you can hear the sanity dripping away, showing how many tasks he's done, along with the hint that this is the final task.
Let's win. Before it consumes me. If I do this, will you fulfill my wish? Quickly. I don't have time. I can't control it.
It's amazing how much detail has gone into a precursor this big, and I can only hope the payoff exceeds my expectations. Now, the other two team members, I would argue could switch their positions depending on how I feel. However, I feel like Jakar has the better of the two. Jakar is from a race of aliens focused solely on conquest and expansion. He participated in dozens of invasions, conquering planet after planet for his empire. Despite how proud he was of his achievements, Jakar had second thoughts about his goal. Was he only a tool for his empire? During one invasion near Earth's solar system, his pod malfunctioned and crash-landed him on Earth. Jakar attempted to re-establish contact with his fleet, but the communication device was damaged. He was now stuck on this alien world. Jakar came into contact with humans and was seen as a threat by many. The only one who saw him differently was Atlas. Atlas was fascinated by Jakar and taught Jakar about human language, cultures, and customs. One of these was playing Core Strike. Core Strike introduced Jakar to playing for the sake of fun, something alien yet exhilarating. This led him to admire humans for their focus on play instead of domination. He stopped trying to contact his fleet and decided to settle down on Earth. Humans still have yet to accept Jakar, seeing him as a threat with some kind of nefarious plan. Once he qualified for the Pro League, many asked for him to be banned from the game for just being who he was. Despite such hate, Jakar plays to hopefully one day become accepted. I love Jakar's story. It was probably a favorite of mine ever since the beta. His entire story is showing that his fear of being only a tool for some higher power was wrong. He's his own person, and it took the discovery of playful fun to realize that. And with him being a veteran of war, the story feels more impactful. Add on some xenophobia to the story, along with the difficulty of acceptance despite being a sweetheart, and you got a character that I just love. Am I biased? Absolutely. But is the story good? I believe it's great, and you can't stop me from having my opinions. And on to the final story. Hope you have some tissues nearby, because it's a gut puncher. Atlas was born to two of the world's most famous astrophysicists. He grew under their strict tutelage, learning the ins and outs of many advanced scientific concepts at a young age. He was obedient and orderly, studying hard to follow in his parents' footsteps. His parents often left for space voyages, leaving him looking over Luna, his younger sister. Despite his attempts to teach Luna the way his parents taught him, Luna preferred her own way of doing things by finding inspiration in the moment. Despite the arguments about how to do things, Atlas just wanted the best for Luna. Over the years, Atlas helped his parents prepare for an expedition heading into the farthest reaches of the solar system. Once they were ready to leave, they praised Atlas for being the man he's become and left him with one more request, one he's probably heard many times. Take care of Luna while we're away. A few days into the voyage, communication with the ship was lost, leaving Atlas to fear the worst. He started experimenting with the concept of space-time, wanting to find a way to bring his parents back, but he needed a suitable environment to test his inventions, and it seemed the Pro League was the best environment. He banded with Rune and Jakar and qualified for the Pro League. Atlas believes he can finally bring his parents back and needs a few more tests. Next to Zentaro, Atlas has one of the saddest backstories out of the entire cast. From the comic, he was such a happy boy while his parents were around, but once the connection was lost, he became a husk of what he was. Atlas shows little to no facial emotions now due to the tragedy that struck. Yet, he actually still has his emotions. In his voice lines, he still has fear, embarrassment, and happiness.
Pardon me. I was lost in thought. Nice. But I can't celebrate yet. The game goes on. Live! Thank you, but There remains work to be done.
The story of these two siblings feels masterful with how they react differently to trauma. Luna uses her optimism as a shield to deny that her parents could be dead. Meanwhile, Atlas faces the facts and lets sadness take hold, causing him to become who he is now. And they both serve as reminders to one another of what could be if the opposite was true. If Atlas gets his parents back, he'd be over the moon. But if his parents are actually dead, Luna would become severely depressed. I'm sorry, but if this doesn't tell you that Maelstrom deserves the attention and love, I don't know what will. And there you have it, my updated list of every team and striker in Omega Strikers. It's been one hell of a ride for the first year of the game, and I am so glad that I am able to finish this project. I'll be real with you all, I have been working on this for longer than I probably should because of my job making me tired and getting ready for college and all that stuff. Most of it has just been making this script, believe it or not. But I just want to say one final message. Lunch Boy, or anyone at Odyssey, if you're watching this, thank you. You created an incredible game with lovable characters and a gameplay loop that I hardly got tired of. Something that started off as a little project soon grew and grew your small garage work zone into an office of over dozens of workers. Despite all its shortcomings, I can confidently say that Omega Strikers is my favorite game out there. And I hope that one day, whether it be within the next couple of years or in the next decade, the fan base you make will grow to the point where this passion project makes its glorious return. And when that time comes, I'll be back to make more content for this game. I will definitely play your other games to know more about this universe you created and see what you come up with next, because you guys are awesome. And to everyone else, this is my last video on Omega Strikers for now. So for all the ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary brethren who watched me, thank you, and as always, keep on striking.